when you're out there, like in a new place, no one knows you, you're just exploring, um, no one's judging you, no one's talking about you. You will. It's just so much more easy to like explore yourself, try new things.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Multiple Careers podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, Lu Sien Tan, who is back on the podcast. Lu Sien worked in Seattle as a software engineer for 8 years until he finally decided to leave his job to go on a 2-year-long mini retirement in Fukuoka, Japan. We talked about why he decided to do a mini retirement instead of a sabbatical, how he prepared for it, what the cost of living in Japan was, including the price of beer, and how the experience refreshed him for his next stage of his career, which is indie game development, and also whether or not doing a mini retirement was actually worth it. We got into a lot of things that might be useful for those of you who are thinking about doing a mini retirement yourself, but in case you want to skip right to something more specific, feel free to check out the timestamps in the descriptions below to jump ahead. And if you're someone who's interested in building an alternative career that's fulfilling and meaningful instead of just sticking to the standard path, then also make sure to subscribe and don't forget to set the notification bell to all notifications. Enjoy the podcast. Hi, Lu Sien. Welcome back
Hey,
to the Multiple Careers podcast.
glad
So
to be
great to
back
have you
here.
here again. Yeah, awesome. I'm so excited about today's podcast to talk about your mini retirement experience in Japan. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and I mean, I know roughly what you did there. You spent almost 2 years in Japan, almost, right? Learning the
Mhm.
language there. And yeah, I just think it's so exciting that you did something like that, like taking the time in between work to do something like that. And I want to
Mhm.
talk about all the details, like what you did there exactly, what you learned, how it went, how you planned it, and also if it was worth it or not, right?
Right.
And
Right.
yeah, we'll get to all of that. But first of all, just to give our viewers a bit of context, could you perhaps start by telling us a bit about what you did in the time before you went to Japan and
Mhm.
what you did afterwards? So we're kind of taking Japan as this midpoint, and we have pre-Japan and post-Japan. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. So before I went to Japan, I was working as a software engineer. I've been doing that for almost 8 years, I think. Um, so yeah, then after I quit my job, not long after that is when I started that 2 years mini retirement trip in Japan. And after I came back from Japan, I no longer work as a software engineer, but instead I started my own project, working on my own game development project,
Hmm.
and all the way to this point. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, it sounds like such a different kind of career path, right? Than like the standard one. Yeah, but yeah, it's so great that you did it. And yeah, as I understand, you had a lot of fun there.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about how did you get to that decision? Why did you decide, okay, I'm gonna quit my job now, and before I do anything else, I want to go to Japan and learn the language? Like, what brought you to that point?
Like the idea itself, I already had the idea for quite a while, so it wasn't that sudden. I would say probably even 5 years before I actually went to Japan, I already had the idea. And so in 2013, I think that's when I had my just a short trip. I think it was like 2 to 3 weeks. I went to Japan just for vacation.
Which city did you go to at that time?
At that time, I think it was Tokyo, mostly Tokyo and surroundings,
Okay.
um, which is different from the city I ended up staying for 2 years in. But that kind of pushed me towards, yeah, even sometime in the future, I do want to go back to Japan, maybe for a longer period of time, because I did have a great experience during that vacation, but there's always a big difference between just having a short trip versus actually trying to live there, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was one of the definitely motivator for me to do that. But yeah, the idea has already been around. I think it was just a matter of time when I was gonna do it. Um, and like I think my job was going, like as a software engineer, was going pretty well at the time. So that also make it a bit harder for me to leave my job and decide when to actually quit and do this thing, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, I took my time and just try to find the right moment. Just yeah.
Was it common at that time in your industry or where you worked that people would take a break, so to speak, and go somewhere to learn something for a longer amount of time?
Um, I'm not sure if it's like exactly super common, but there are definitely people who are doing that. Um, yeah, I definitely have coworkers and other people I know within the industry that does this. I think um, there are probably two types because in my case, I didn't return to my old job where a lot of
Mhm.
other people took these sabbatical trips where they
Mhm.
spend 6 months traveling somewhere and then going back to their previous job.
Mm. Yeah, that was also something that I wanted to ask you. Why did you decide to quit and go to Japan instead of, yeah, for example, like your other colleagues did, just do a
Mhm.
sabbatical for 6 months?
Right. Um, that's a good question.
Mhm.
Um, I think one factor was that my my mini retirement was a bit longer than the typical sabbatical, I would say, which usually people go away for 6 to 12 months. While I
Mm.
was away for almost 2 years. And actually, by the when I started, when I left for Japan, I wasn't entirely sure how long I'm going to stay there. Like, yes, the plan is for a certain duration of time, but
Mm.
I might like extend, for example, and I want to keep that option open.
Mhm.
So that's why I choose to not like um, tell the company that I'm coming back. Yeah.
How long did you initially plan to go in the beginning?
In the beginning, it was so I'm taking a Japanese language course there. So it was just for the duration of the program, which there several length of the program, but I was aiming for 1.5 year roughly.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good idea because if you do a sabbatical, that it basically means that you're on extended leave at
Right.
your company, right? And
Yeah.
you promise like they promise you that they'll give you your job when you come back, but at the same time
Right.
you're also promising them that you'll come back, right? So if you
Right.
want to extend, you basically don't really have the option and the flexibility to extend, whereas in
Yeah.
your case you quit so you can basically do whatever you want, right?
Right. Yeah. It's definitely a big factor. And I guess I was at the point where I wasn't sure what I'm going to do next. Like I ended
Mm.
up doing game development by myself, right? And I did consider it even when by the time I was leaving for Japan. So yeah, I just want to be more flexible in that regards. And I guess just job security wise, I wasn't that worried considering how big of a demand in software engineers are these days. And uh, I cannot tell for sure, but I have the impression that even my old company would be gladly to take me back, even after that long trip. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point because I'd imagine that many people who want to do this kind of thing, they might be concerned about, okay, once it's up, the time is up and I go back, what I am I then going to do? Can I go back or I'll
Right.
start where I left off after, I mean, after 6 months, perhaps, yes, but after 2 years, like, will the industry accept me back again? And
Yeah.
yeah, that's a lot to consider, right? But it seems in your case, yeah, it worked out very
Yeah.
well.
I do think there's definitely upside to both scenarios, regardless whether like your old company takes you back or not. Because like on one hand, yes, it's you feel safe, right? Like, oh yeah, I have a job after I come back. But on the other hand, you'll have the same job when you're done with your mini retirement.
Yeah, it's
Where if you don't have that sort of safety net,
mm,
it I guess the situation just forces you to try other things, perhaps, right?
that's true.
Or
Yeah. Do you think if you went on a sabbatical instead
Mhm.
of quitting and then leaving it open indefinitely, like, do you think the chances would be higher that you went back to your company instead of doing your own thing and developing your game?
I think so. Yeah. Um, I don't know for how long I will stay there, but I feel like I will definitely stay there at least for a while,
Hmm.
and then I'll need like that another chunk period of time where I need to like think about, okay, what am I going to do next, and that will probably take a while, right?
Yeah.
And then who knows when I'll start my game development project.
Yeah. Yeah, that requires some guts, I would say, but I'm pretty sure that
Yeah.
this will inspire a lot of people listening to this right now. Yeah, so maybe we could just dive in straight into your experience um, in Japan. But okay,
Mhm.
one more thing that I wanted to ask before we get to that is,
Yeah.
what did you tell your colleagues and your boss? Did you just say, "Okay, bye bye, guys, I'm gonna go now"? What did you tell them, and how did they react?
Um, I think actually that's probably exactly what I told my coworkers and my boss. Because yeah, I don't know, they were quite understanding. Um, of course, they were a bit sad that, especially my boss, that I had to leave
Oh.
the company. Because yeah, I've been there for quite a while and um, really like the place. I really like the people. Um, so yeah, they were quite understanding, and I guess back to your point about it does like this kind of sabbatical thing does happen from time to time in the industry. So I think from that perspective, they kind of understand too.
They saw it coming, right? At some point.
Probably, yeah, like something would come, because yeah, and I think in general in the software industry, like the turnover rate is pretty fast, pretty short. I mean, so
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I can guess that maybe some people were a bit envious that you were going. How exciting is
right,
that, right? Yeah.
yeah. But for my boss, at least, like at least I don't go to like a competitor or something, right?
Oh, that's a good point. Very good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I think they were happy for me.
right. Yeah.
They were really supportive.
Yeah, I want to go into the details about your experience in Japan, but I have to remind myself that I want to try and keep this chronological for the listeners so they're not too confused. So maybe we can continue by talking about so after you got this, you said you had this idea about doing this like long before, but then it got to a point where it really got concrete and you really thought seriously about doing this, right? Leaving your job, going to Japan.
Mhm.
What were sort of the steps in planning this whole thing out while you were still working so that this became concrete? Because if I understood correctly, it wasn't that you quit and then you planned the trip, right? I
Right.
mean, you did it before you quit. Could you tell
Correct.
us a bit about that planning phase?
Okay, the timeline might be a bit blurry here,
That's fine.
but
Just roughly.
I would say roughly a year before I quit, like yeah, 6 to 12 months before I quit is when I like research where in Japan I want to live, um, which like I think by that time I know at least I'm gonna like go to a language school and learn Japanese. So researching which school, um, and just basic things like how much it costs and like what's the environment like over there. Just various sort of living things to consider. And yeah, that definitely is a quite involved research because there's a lot of options, right? Like if you go to into a new country and you don't know that much, like at that time I probably know Tokyo the best, but there's a lot of other places to consider.
But how do you finally make that decision? I mean, among so many choices, like what were your criteria
They make
in
okay.
picking that place?
So I ended up choosing Fukuoka, which is
Mhm.
one of the, I don't know, probably fifth biggest city in Japan or something, but it's
Mhm.
way smaller than Tokyo. And I think the fact that it's less hectic than Tokyo is one factor because
Mhm.
I think you've been to Tokyo, right? And you've seen like how crazy it gets
Yeah,
during
yeah,
like
and to
restaurant and stuff.
Fukuoka briefly too. Yeah, it's much more relaxed and has another vibe, right? Like
Right.
far more
Because
relaxed.
yeah, bigger places like Tokyo or Osaka, it's just super busy all the time, hectic, and
Mhm.
I think I want to try a more slow city compared
So
to
you were
those.
consciously looking for some place that's more relaxed
Yeah,
and slow, right? Yeah, that's a good point. So you don't always have to go to the capital, right? And
right.
try and explore other places, regardless where you want to do your language course or mini retirement.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's another factor because I've been to Tokyo before, so definitely checking out other places would be interesting. And in conjunction with the fact that Tokyo is super crowded, there's also a lot more foreigners there. And I thought to myself, if I go to Tokyo, I would like, I would probably easy kind of pulled by other foreigners and just like have this foreigner social circle. And I really want to try prevent that and have like more interaction with like the locals, which gives me more opportunity to practice the language and also learn more about the culture and actually have a better insight like how living in Japan actually is.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that
Right.
I saw that a lot happening when I studied abroad. If
Mhm.
you're like within an environment where there are a lot of people from your own country, then you
Yeah.
tend to kind of group with them, go everywhere with them, and like you don't get to really know the local culture and the people, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like you'll be trapped in this comfortable bubble where you just speak English all the time and like that'll
Yeah,
be kind of
yeah.
pointless, right?
Yeah, that's true. So how long in advance before the D date did you actually start registering for courses and buying your ticket and everything? And I mean, I guess you might need a visa or so, like in case
Hmm.
any listeners like want to know how much time do you basically need in advance if you want to make it go smoothly and not forget anything?
Right. I cannot remember exactly how long before, but I would say um around 6 months before my departure. And probably I think I got all like my visa and my permits and everything ready probably 3 months before the departure.
You applied for it 3 months before, or
No, like it's all done. Like I got
Oh,
my
okay.
visa arrived and I got accepted by school. I have my
Yeah.
housing and stuff. Maybe around 3 months before I left for Japan is when it's all done, the process.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good timeline. So 6 months before. And it's just very interesting for me to know how you coordinated this in terms of like leaving your job.
Uh-huh.
So when do you tell the company then? Like did you start planning first and then tell them, or like did that happen in parallel?
Um, right. I can't remember exactly. I definitely did the 2 weeks notice,
The standard,
the
right?
standard 2 weeks
Uh,
notice, but before that, I think I mentioned it to at least my manager and some other people that
Mhm.
are like my closer coworkers
Mhm.
that I know well. Yeah, because just as kind of yeah, because I
Courtesy.
courtesy. Yeah,
Courtesy
I
by
mean
Lucien.
I know them well, and like I think it helps them with recruiting, right? Because they'll need someone to fill my position and stuff like that. So I
Mhm.
thought it would be nice to just give them a heads up.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to continue that, what kind of visa did you need to study there?
Um, it was a student visa. Yeah,
Student visa.
and
Okay.
yeah, and the good thing is the language school is because it is for international students. They help me handle a lot of that process, so it was a
Oh,
lot
that's
easier.
cool.
Yeah, they told me which form I need to fill and so on and so forth.
So was it a language school? Is that part of a university or a college, or is this like it's a dedicated language school
It's a
that's
dedicated
just
language
for
school.
foreigners to
Yep.
study?
Yep.
Oh, okay. And what kind of level of proficiency do they teach, or like to what proficiency level can you get when you study there?
I think they go all the way from the most basic to whatever level you need to like get a job, kind of, or for
Okay.
college level. Although I think I noticed there's definitely less students in that upper bracket and
Okay.
more students on the lower bracket, right? Because like I don't know, not everyone like wants to go to college or get a business job thingy.
Right, right. Yeah, that's cool. So they help you with everything. So once you pick them, they kind of guided you through this whole process of what you need to prepare in terms of visa and
Yeah,
logistics and
yep.
yeah. How
They
about the living? Oh, I'm sorry, go on.
Oh yeah, I was actually going to mention that. Exactly. They
Yeah,
even help with living. And
accommodation.
yeah. And that's actually I didn't realize it at first, but that's a huge help like if you wanna kind of stay in Japan because as a foreigner, renting a place in Japan is really, really hard.
Oh, really?
So the fact that they help you, like I think I'm sure like it's sort of you're backed by the school kind of you're vouched by the school, that's why they can find you places to live easier because a
Yes.
lot of other places they they make it hard for foreigners.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you kind of have a guarantor in a sense with that
Yes,
school.
exactly, I think
Yeah.
that's the thing, a guarantor.
Are you comfortable of telling our listeners the name of the institution if
Oh
you
yeah,
recommend them?
yeah, I
If your
totally
experience
recommend
was
it.
good, yeah.
It's funny because the first, like the name, I found it a bit weird at first. I wouldn't thought that they were like a Japanese language school. They're called YMCA.
What?
YMCA.
YMCA? But is it? It's
Yeah,
not
I think it's
connected
part
to
of
the
the
YMCA in the
YMCA
States.
organization or something.
Oh, really? Oh,
But
that's interesting.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I wasn't very sure about it at first because I thought it might be like really quite, I don't know, there's a religious aspect to it perhaps, but in the end, not really. It's just a
Hmm.
language school in the end.
So, what is the name of the complete name of the institution? YMCA
Oh,
Japan?
I cannot remember. I think it's like Fukuoka YMCA
Okay.
language school or something like
So
that.
if people Google that as keywords, it should show up, right?
Yeah, it's
Mhm,
definitely, I think it's one of the more well known
mhm.
language school, at least in Fukuoka. But
So
I think they have a lot of branches all over Japan too.
oh, okay, so it's not the only one. They have several places then.
Right.
Okay. And your experience overall, how was it with them, like dealing with them as an institution?
Um, I think it was great in general. Yeah, it was definitely. Uh, to be honest, I didn't know what to expect exactly, but yeah, I was very satisfied with. with the whole program. Yeah.
Cool. Great recommendation then for anyone who
Yeah.
wants to go and is still wondering like where to exactly, learn
Yeah. I think the
Japanese.
teachers were great, and like, yeah, they definitely get, like, you definitely learn a lot from them. And like the classes were always just from the very, very beginning directly
Mhm.
Japanese. Because, I mean, like, the teachers probably don't even speak English that much or capable of speaking English that much. So
Yeah.
you're just thrown in there and like, go Japanese.
Wow. Yeah, that's actually a very good way to learn the language, right? Having the instructors just speaking that language
Yeah.
as instruction. Yeah. Before we continue, let's just rewind a bit again. So,
Hmm.
let's go back to the point where you were still in Seattle, where you're living now, right?
Hmm.
So, what happened like in the weeks before you went to Japan? I mean, you were living there, you already had your stuff, and so, and you were planning to go for 1 year plus, which is quite a long time. So, what did you do with all your stuff? And I mean, and what
Um,
did you bring with you to Japan?
let's see. Good thing I didn't have that much stuff to begin with, so that's always a good thing.
Okay. Be
Um,
minimalistic.
but yeah, I just leave all the stuff that I have and where I live at the moment. And I pretty much brought with me just the minimum things I need. Clothing, pretty much. My PlayStation 4, um, and my guitar.
Oh, okay.
So just basic things. Yeah, the guitar was kind of bulky, but yeah, I thought I might have time there to get back to guitar and play some, but turns out not really, which is a good sign, probably.
Okay. So you spent your time well there. You didn't waste
Right.
any time.
At least
Yeah.
I'm not just stuck at home. But
So the
sorry, yeah.
so the airline the airline allowed you to bring that much stuff, or was that within your allowance, or did you have to like purchase
The
it?
guitar was the guitar extra? So I only carry like one suitcase with me. It's actually a rather smaller suitcase.
Mm.
That's it. And I think they allow. I forgot if I have to pay for the guitar or they just counted that as a second suitcase thing. But it wasn't that hard. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so okay, you departed from Seattle and then you arrived there, and did you then immediately start going to that school, or did you have a chance to go traveling first?
Um. I I think it was I arrived probably a few weeks or a couple weeks before school started, so not I didn't go like all over Japan, but I pretty much just explored the city, which
Mhm.
in itself is new to me, right? And
Fukuoka.
yeah, it was really exciting just like exploring that city. It's like, okay, I'm gonna live here, so might as well check out the neighborhood, right?
Right.
Check the place like around where I live, check out some of the other neighborhoods, um, the city center, how to take the subways.
Mhm.
It's like everything is new and exciting.
Did you immediately move into that place, that apartment, or did you need to find any temporary accommodation first, like a hotel or something?
No, I moved directly to the apartment that was provided by the or guaranteed by the school. Yeah,
Okay, cool. So that went quite smoothly then, right?
yeah. I think the process was pretty smooth. I would say, yeah.
Mhm.
Like I arrived at the apartment and almost at the precise time, the, the agent or someone was waiting there for me and showed
And
me the
held up a
room, and that's
sign
it.
like with your name?
Ah,
Like,
no,
no,
no.
no, no limousine or so coming up to catch you.
No. Yeah, that would be great, huh?
Yeah, that's like maybe that's a premium service, right? Costs more.
Premium service, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. So what was the whole learning part like, the course? I mean, how is it structured in terms of, I don't know, semesters or levels and exams and so on?
Um, yeah, so they basically have multiple level of classes, ranking from the lowest is rank, I think, D. No, it's E, and then it goes D, C, B, A, where A is the highest and most difficult class. So I think I started in D, perhaps. I might be a bit blurry on this. And then I got all the way to B, I think. But I don't think I actually finished the B level.
So what does the first one was D? That's the lowest, right?
Lowest is E.
Oh,
So,
E.
yeah.
Okay, that's really
So
funny
E is
how-
like, I think if you absolutely have no exposure at all to like the Japanese language.
Oh, okay.
But since back in college, I actually took 3 quarters of Japanese,
Mhm.
and occasionally I watch like animated films in Japanese,
Mm.
and I play Japanese games sometimes. So I do
Mm.
know some things like the letters, for example, the
Okay.
alphabet. I was pretty familiar
Is
with
that
that.
the hiragana?
Yeah, the hiragana,
The hiragana.
and I
Oh.
know some katakana as well. That's for
Katakana is the foreign language one, right?
the alphabet for the foreign language.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that gave me a decent start. So they put me in D.
Okay. How did you know? Like, at what point did you know whether you get into D or E? Was there a test before you arrived, or did they do it on the spot?
I didn't know before. I didn't know anything before I arrived. So
Okay.
yeah, it's once I arrived, and I think they might have they did ask me question about what I know and stuff.
Mm.
And also, I guess from the application, I did include like what I've learned before.
Mm.
So yeah, they ended up just putting me in D.
Okay.
And I think they're being pretty flexible with like if if it feels too difficult for you, they can easily move you to E or move you up to C,
Yeah,
which does happen.
I was just going to say maybe they thought it's too easy for you and then move you up to C instead, right? So
Right.
that would have been a possibility if they realized that okay, Lu Sien is like much more advanced. Let's put him in C or B instead.
Right. No,
But that didn't happen, no.
that didn't happen. No. I think they're pretty good at evaluating roughly what place is the best for the student.
Yeah.
And sometimes, yeah, you like students' ability varies in different kind of parts. Like there were actually a lot of students from Chinese speaking country, and so like in respect of the kanji letters, the kind of Chinese characters,
Chinese
they were
character.
really good at it. But
Okay.
on the other hand, they might not know the grammar so well,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, so even even if they're doing okay in one department, they might still learn a lot in another department.
Mm, I see. Yeah. And how long does one normally study in one level? Like, for example, level D. How long would one stay at level D?
Um, I think so. Within those E, D, C, B, and so on levels, they actually divide it even further to 1, 2, and 3. So, for example, C, there's C1, C2, C3. I
Oh, okay.
forgot which one is higher, which one is lower.
Mhm.
But so to jump from one letter to another letter, it I guess it really depends how fast you learn, sort of.
Okay.
Because if you can, for example, jump from the lower D to a higher D, for example, within a quarter,
A quarter of a
that,
year, so like 3
right?
months.
That's the smallest
Oh,
chunk of
okay.
learning period. But for some students, it might be that they jump like from the lower D to I don't know to C immediately or something like
In a
that
quarter as
in a
well.
quarter. Yeah, so
Okay.
there's no strict requirements on like 1 quarter is equivalent to a certain amount of time, but
But how would they assess it? how would they assess that someone could move up from is ready to move up from E to, let's say, D1 or whatever? Like, is it based on the tests, or is it based on requests that you ask them, okay, I'm ready now, I want to go up?
I think you can definitely request if you feel confident, but mostly yeah through tests and evaluation and like what the teacher thinks basically.
Mhm.
Like, I think yeah, like you could say, hey, I think this class would be too easy for me. Can I jump to the other class? Or man, I'm still struggling even with this class. Please don't
I need
don't
more
take me too
time.
high yet. Yeah, I'm not ready
Oh,
for this.
okay. How many people were there in one class? And also, is there like one class for the whole D level, or is it separated by like the D1, D2, D3, as you said?
Yeah, it's separated by the D1, D2
Okay.
thing, and like the higher you go, the less the division there are. Like I feel like in the lower ranks, like there's there's a clear difference between D1, D2, D3,
Mm,
whereas going up, I think there's less of that because I mean it just get harder in general. So,
mhm.
but they're usually like when I was in the D class, I think I don't know, 15, 12,
15?
12 students maybe,
Okay.
12 students.
That's a pretty small class.
Yeah,
You said.
yeah. But I think as I moved up a bit, it does get smaller at times.
Mhm.
Yeah, probably to like, I don't know. Sometimes uh, there was definitely a time where my class had like, I don't know, 8 students or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Um, there are classes with even less student at times. It really depends on like the intake of students, right? Who's coming, who's
Right.
leaving, and like they don't always have control over that.
So the further you go up, it kind of gets more private, right? Maybe
Yeah,
at the top you're with two people in a
yeah.
class.
I think I know. Yeah, there's some students out there that's just like 1-on-1 or 2-on-1 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and they also do like if you're behind or you're having difficulties with certain aspects of the language. For example, for me, the kanji characters are really difficult, so they have like special classes for you to catch up on those specific topics.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And was this a full-time thing, or can you also do it part-time, or how does it work?
I think you can do it part-time too. Is it possible? I'm not sure if part-time is available actually, although I do know they have different types of programs and they're pretty flexible about things, about the type of lessons they offer. But what I was doing was full-time, which is 4 hours of classes every day
Four
plus
hours.
homework, which varies um, between one probably 1 to 2 hours every day.
One
I would say.
on your own time at
Yeah,
home. Okay. Was there any group
yeah.
work?
Group work. Like you mean group homework kind of thing, or just
Yeah, yeah, like working on an assignment together.
yeah, like those are usually in class. The homework outside of class is usually just individual.
Mhm.
I think. Maybe yeah. Sometimes they're like if you do like some kind of presentation or there are certain activity that requires a group kind of assignment. So you
So
gotta get
4 hours.
together and figure something out.
Okay. So 4 hours in class, and that is from Monday to Friday, 5 days a week.
Yes, 5 days a week.
Okay. And are there any breaks during the year, or how does it
Yeah.
work in terms of academic schedule?
Um, yeah, I think it's pretty typical. I cannot remember the details, but usually between quarters, there's some amount of breaks, and some breaks are longer than others. So, um, yeah, but there are definitely breaks between them.
Okay. Yeah, so 4 hours per day is actually, I mean, for full time, that's not too much. I mean, yeah, you still have
Mhm.
the homework, right? And I can imagine that takes quite some time. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel like the course load was a lot, or did you feel like you had a lot of time to explore Japan and do other things and hang out and have fun?
Yeah. I yeah, it definitely feels intense because it's sort of an intense program, but I do still feel like I have a lot of time to do other things, explore, um, hang out with friends. So yeah, but I guess depends on the the time, like because when there's tests or when there's like sometimes there's a lot more homework than usual, then things get a bit more hectic. But otherwise, yeah, in general, I find and there's enough time to like hang out and explore.
Okay. And after you did this course, what did you get at the end of it? What kind of certificate, or yeah, what kind of certificate did you get?
So the only certificate I got is from the school, which is probably only somewhat useful, um, and but it's definitely not super useful for like getting a job or entering college in Japan. For those things, you need the official tests from the government, which is called JLPT. And
JLTT.
yes, and those are really hard.
Oh, really?
And
Yeah.
there are levels to it. And like, I tried taking one of the tests, but I did fail.
Oh, wow.
Maybe primarily because of the kanji, but and maybe because I didn't study that hard. Probably partially because I didn't really have any big motivator for me to like
Hmm.
succeed and get the certification because I wasn't particularly looking like for a job or anything.
In
Or
Japan.
yeah, so
Hmm.
I didn't like specifically study for the tests because there are like very specific methods and books and ways of learning to pass the test. They're like
Okay.
very specific technique.
It
Like
sounds a bit,
even
sorry, it sounds a bit like the TOEFL
oh
or
yeah,
IELTS
yeah,
exam, right? For English.
yeah. Like
So,
certain classes in like even the school, like the school I go to, they offer specific like sessions, or even extra sessions for students who want to take that test. So they
oh,
get guidance on like what exactly they need to
the
know,
tricks.
like which vocabulary might be out, which grammar,
Oh, really?
like reading
Hmm.
comprehension, like strategy, which one do you want to read, which one do you want to
Okay.
ignore, and so on. Where for me, I think, and I did mention this to the school at the very first that my goal was like mostly conversational skill
Hmm.
rather than like official tests and getting a job.
Mm. Yeah, so it seems like before you go, you really have to know what your goal is studying the language, if it's just like more for fun, conversational, or if you want to actually try and get a job in Japan
Right.
after that, right? That's like a totally
Mhm.
different focus and, yeah,
Yeah.
method maybe.
Yeah. I imagine if I actually aim seriously to get to pass one of those tests, there'll be a lot of less free time.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Those are extreme. Those are
yeah.
intense.
Yeah. So what was actually your motivation to learn Japanese in the first place?
Um, I think there's several parts to this. So first is pretty simple. Like ever since I was a kid, I was really into like Japanese pop culture. So it's just a natural interest that comes from there. Um, like knowing the language, like will make consuming those contents even easier, right? And I can relate to that more. Um, the other thing is like one of the reason I went to Japan was to just I'm curious about how it feels to like live there and living in another country, and I guess in this case it's Japan. And I think to really live in a place, like language is a very important aspect of it. Like with if you cannot communicate with anyone there, it will be really hard to know what it feels living there, because
Yeah.
it's not just about the place, it's about the people, right? And
Mhm.
you cannot relate to the people if you cannot communicate with them.
Right.
Or
Right.
that's my thought process, at least.
Yeah, that's a really important thing to consider. So actually one of the things that you really wanted to find out is, yeah, how it would be like to live there, right? And yeah, it seems to me that for anyone who is considering to go live in another country, that would be a very good method to first find out whether it's really for you or not before making that move, right? Making that permanent move, like do a
Yeah,
language course for a while, and then because it's different compared to when you just go on a trip and do like vacation there,
right.
where you just like have fun and relax, right? It's different if you actually are
Yeah,
in class and yeah, you can
yeah,
experience everything differently.
yeah. It definitely depends on what you want, because I can totally imagine. And I know there are people who like live in Japan, or just in general, like people living in another country for work, and they actually live there, but they don't actually speak the local language.
Like expats,
And
right?
yeah,
A lot
expat.
of expats.
And that's, if that's what you want, that's, I think that's totally fine too.
Mhm.
But yeah, in my case, I want to go as close as possible to know like what it is living there as a local, which I think I haven't gotten to in the end, but at least I'm somewhat closer.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is something that I want to ask you in more detail. I think that's something very interesting to know more about, like going on like a trip vacation there versus actually living for a more extended time. But before I forget, I want to go back to the topic again.
Uh-huh. Oh,
Yeah,
where
and
were we?
I think one important thing that we definitely have to cover that I'm pretty sure that our listeners want to know is related to cost.
Hmm.
So how much does this thing cost? How much does it cost to, maybe let's start first with studying there. How much approximately does this language course cost?
Okay. I'm very blurry on the numbers and the details, but I think the program costed me around 6,000 US dollars, I think, in total.
In total, meaning for the whole 2 years?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I
So per
think it
year
was around.
would be around 3,000? Is that fair?
I think so. Yeah, that should be fair.
Okay. And that's at a standard pace, like learning at a standard pace, going through those levels one by one at the regular pace.
I think those two things are separate. Like the amount you pay is doesn't depend on like how fast you progress.
Mhm.
Like you can progress fast or progress slow, right? But the tuition is still the same.
Oh, really? So no matter which level, if whether you're in E or D, you pay the same?
Yeah, yeah, I think
Okay,
so.
that's
I'm
cool.
not I'm not sure about like if there's like special rate for even the higher levels, but
Okay.
just so far as my experience was concerned, it's like yeah, because maybe they already took it into account, because I think I did pay it in a lump sum at the beginning
Mhm.
of the project of the program, so
Maybe there was some built-in discount
maybe
or
they're yeah
so.
they're already
Okay.
calculating it.
Okay.
But yeah, it's separate from how fast you progress.
Okay.
Like 1/4 is 1/4 of their working time, I guess that's how it is, right? Regardless of
Yeah.
you're failing or succeeding.
So that's not too bad then. I imagine it to be a bit more expensive. So every year, 1 year, around $3,000. And
Yeah,
could someone actually just go for 6 months and, yeah, I don't know, pay like, if they only have $2,000
yeah,
as
I
a
think
budget, could
totally, yeah.
they go just
People
for a
do
few
that.
months?
Some people do a shorter um study program for a quarter or something,
A
I
quarter
guess.
even?
I think
Okay,
so, yeah.
that's not bad. Yeah. So if it's like 3 months, then you might even be able to do kind of an unpaid leave arrangement with the company, right? If you don't want to quit for good,
Yeah, yeah,
unpaid leave, extended leave, and then
yeah,
go. Hmm.
yeah. In that case, it's sort of more probably feels like a college exchange program thing, right?
Okay.
In a
Yeah.
shorter
Yeah.
period. Yeah,
Right. Right. And did you have to pay anything extra for the exams or the study material, like books, or was that all inclusive?
I think most of the books are inclusive. The only thing I paid extra was for the official test, the JLPT that I attempted to try. Yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
think only for that I had to pay extra.
But that one wasn't mandatory. Was not mandatory.
No,
Right?
it
That was
was not
something you wanted
mandatory.
to do
Yeah,
on your own.
yeah. A
Oh,
lot of my classmates were taking it, so I was like, why not give it a shot?
okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's not too bad then. Yeah. So let's go on to the other like major expense. What about the
Right,
living cost, especially renting? How much was that?
right. So the apartment that was referred to by the school, I think it costed me around $500 per month,
US dollars
US
per
dollars.
month?
Mm-hmm.
It's not too bad.
550. No, it's not too bad at all. But yeah, it of course depends where you live before that, and at least for me, it definitely feels a lot more affordable.
Yeah, when you come from the States and especially from Seattle, right? Then it
Yeah,
feels like, okay, this is much cheaper. Yeah, but
right.
what was the place like? Like, what do you get for that price?
Yeah, the downside is it's definitely very small, which turns out to be pretty standard in Japan. um, yeah, it's really small. It's like a studio with like a mini kitchen, um,
What's the square
and
footage
pretty
approximately?
old. Oh, I cannot remember. It's probably 200 square feet or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, it's tiny, but it's livable,
It,
I guess, for one person, right?
yeah, it's definitely livable.
And you have your own like kitchen and not kitchen, I don't know, like kitchenette or bathroom inside, or do
Yeah,
you
it's
share?
the kitchen is very small. It's basically one stove, fridge, sink, and not a whole lot place to cut ingredients, which kind of it made me shied away from doing any cooking by myself. So I mostly ate out. Yeah, but
Mm.
um, let's see. Yeah, the building itself was somewhat old. It definitely feels old, but even if it's old, it was functional and clean,
Mhm.
which is good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it
500.
definitely feels like when you look from the outside, it looks very old. It feels like it comes from like Soviet era or something like that. Yeah, kind of
Oh,
apartment, just yeah,
yeah.
concrete.
So, but this was in Fukuoka, right? 550 US dollars. So, if this was in in Tokyo, it might have been more expensive, right?
I'd mentioned so. Yeah,
Okay, yeah,
probably a
550.
bit more expensive.
Was that all in, or I mean, did it include, I don't know, heating and electricity, water, stuff like that,
Oh,
internet?
it definitely includes the internet.
Mm.
I can't remember if it includes utility or not. I
Okay.
think it actually does.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So if you previously rented in the States and then moved there for like 2 years, actually you wouldn't be paying more then, right? You would be paying less.
I'm paying a lot less.
Because what can you get in Seattle for $550? I mean,
Now, not much.
in Toronto, where I am now, certainly you cannot get anything. And
Yeah,
the best you can share, like with three other people, share an apartment,
exactly.
maybe.
Yeah, you have to share. So yeah, in that regards, I think it definitely felt easier on the financial side for me, which is definitely
Yeah,
good. And it's not just rent; also just living costs in general feels definitely lower than here in Seattle. Which
lower. Okay,
yeah, because Seattle's getting crazy now.
right. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's maybe that's another kind of thing to consider if you're studying abroad or trying to live somewhere else. Like it does feel nice if your new place is cheaper than before.
Yeah.
But it's all relative, right? Because like some of my classmates, like they feel like, oh, you got Japan so expensive, right?
Where were they from, your classmates?
So most of them are from Asian countries around Japan. So most common is South Korea, Taiwan, and probably China. It's like those are usually like 90% of the class,
Mm.
and the rest are probably from some other Asian countries around, and maybe then the last remaining percentage is from somewhere else, probably from some of the Western countries or Europe.
Yeah, it really depends on where you lived previously, right? Mhm.
Yeah.
How about food and transportation? Could you give us a rough idea of how much you spent, like, I don't know, for a meal, or yeah, for a ride with the subway?
Um, yeah, let's see. Again, things are very blurry, but I take the subway all the time. Well, I do that, and I also biked, but subway was one trip on average maybe $1.50 to $2 probably,
Hmm. Yeah,
and
pretty
that gets
standard.
you pretty much anywhere um, around the city.
Hmm.
And for food, um, like a decent meal can cost anywhere between $5 to $10. It's pretty standard, I would say, for a regular meal.
Hmm.
Um,
Without beverages,
without beverages, yes,
without the beer.
without the beer. But
How much is the
beer
beer,
is
by the
pretty
way?
cheap
Yeah,
too.
we definitely need to know about the beer index. Always important.
Yeah, if there's anything, you get a lot of saving from drinking over there because um yeah, depends on the place, but I think like standard beer, it can go as low as 200 yen in some places, which is like $2, to the
Wow.
standard maybe 400, 500 yen, which is like $5 ish.
Okay, that's
um
pretty decent if you eat out, right?
yeah.
Mhm.
um but beer in general is pretty cheap because it's pretty common. Everyone drink, yeah, a lot of people drink beer there.
Mhm.
And there's always nomi hodai, which is all you can drink.
Oh, that's dangerous.
And in that case, it of course depends how much you can drink within the 2 hours they give you.
Yeah.
And how persistent you are in calling the waitress or waiter.
Wow. Yeah, it seems to me like the living costs, like the cost overall every month is not more than what you spend in Seattle, right? It's definitely lower than that.
Yeah, definitely lower, especially in Fukuoka. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you be okay to share with our listeners how you kind of financed the this mini retirement? I mean, did you work there? Did you tap into your savings, or how did you do this?
It's all just savings.
Savings.
I I considered whether I want to do some work there, but I guess it's more for experience. But I
Mhm.
decided not to do it. But yeah, so it's mostly just for my savings.
Okay. Would that have been an option? Were there any classmates who did work over there?
Yeah, mostly did what they call baito, which is part-time
Right.
work.
Oh,
Whether yeah, oftentimes it's like restaurants or convenience store, kind of a lot of service type of job.
okay.
And yeah, I was considering that, but I think it does kind of take quite a chunk of your energy away, so I
Mm.
decided not to do it.
Is it easy for foreigners to get that kind of part-time job? Because I imagine you need to be quite good at Japanese already to work.
You need to know some Japanese, but you don't need like a whole lot. Uh, yeah, you don't need that much Japanese to the degree, for example, it's different compared to like an office job, right? Where you need like the proper grammar and like formal words and everything. You just need to for the part-time jobs, you just need enough to get by. That's my understanding. Like basic conversation, I don't know. You can read the menu, um, things like that. I think.
So after your whole experience in Japan for almost 2 years, did anything change in terms of what you thought Japan was like, and like maybe even considering whether or not you would actually want to live there one day?
Mm-hmm.
What were your kind of realizations, your big aha moments?
Big aha moment. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, maybe I should start with the positive things, huh?
Yeah.
So I don't scare away people. But like, yeah, I definitely learned a lot while I was there. Um, I mean, I guess first thing is the like my misconception of the living cost, like we discussed earlier, which I always under I was always under the impression that Japan is super expensive, but I think it doesn't has to be. It really depends on the city and the kind of living style that you have. So that's first. Um, Definitely changed my mind, changed my view of how I view Japan. Um, let's see. Secondly, like before I did this, like I did have this impression that um, like in general, like very generally speaking, people often are kind of distant in Japan, um, and you might even say a bit cold to strangers or to foreigners. But I think it's not that bad. There's certainly some aspect of that I noticed, but I found a lot of people who are really warm, who doesn't mind talking to stranger or foreigners in that case, and they open up. They're willing to be friends. So yeah, I think it's not as extreme as portrayed, or I don't know where I get that kind of perspective from, but
So
yeah,
they're just people, right?
they're just people. Yeah, yeah. I mean, some of the cultural things definitely kind of adds to that distance. Like even just like if you actually look, if you observe the language itself, like you can kind of notice hints on like kind of these rules of grammar or language are forming barriers between people.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I can totally see that point of view as well. But in the end, yeah, it's people are people, and some people have a bigger barrier, but some are definitely willing to kind of put that aside and actually connect with you.
Did you get to make any friends?
Yeah, yeah,
Nice
I
over
did
there?
make some friends there. Um, and yeah, they were all really kind and really warm, um, willing to open up, talk about stuff, hang out, do that kind of things.
Yeah, yeah. That is what my impression was about Japanese people when I traveled there. That they're very very polite. They seem to be very kind and very
Hmm.
helpful. Like once when I went to Tokyo there and I had no idea where how to find a restaurant because everything was in Japanese. Someone actually like really went into much detail to try to explain to me, even though I didn't understand a word
Yeah,
like what they said.
And I think maybe it depends on the place too. Like imagine maybe a busier place like Tokyo, people would be more busy and hesitant to like spend time because they're
Mm.
all busy. Like Japanese people are typically very busy with work, so
Mm.
there's probably another barrier to like just connecting with new people, let alone foreigners.
Mhm.
But maybe like like a smaller place. I mean, Fukuoka is not that small, but definitely less busier. That will, yeah, makes it easier to connect with people.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, especially like if you just explore. Like, I remember exploring my local neighborhoods and just there there are a lot of these kind of smaller shops that's like they live in that place, but it's also like a business. They sell a little bit of food and some drinks.
Like a
It's
house shop.
like a house shop, exactly. Like the owner lives there, but also
Mm.
sells stuff. Like yeah, at the beginning I would just like pop into one here or there, and like the owner and the other customers are usually really friendly, and you just like they will just chat with you very casually. Yeah, especially the older people. Oh, they can get really chatty, especially when they start drinking.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, so that seems to be the upside. Cost is not as it's not as expensive as you thought, and the people are actually great there.
Yeah.
So what's not
So
to love? Why not go on and live there or try to work there then?
right. So this is probably the biggest thing for me, at least, and it definitely varies from person to person. Um, and I kind of noticed already before I went to Japan, but there's a big, there's always a big kind of pressure to conform to social norms in Japan. So I think in general it's less individualistic, like in some of the Western countries, and I think more importance is put onto just social harmony, right? And I think this again probably contributes a little bit to the earlier kind of social barrier that makes it hard to connect to people because there are all these kind of social norms that one's supposed to follow. Um, I guess me being a foreigner, I was a bit exempt from that,
Mm.
but I can still observe it, and even within like the school I attended, which is supposed to be for foreign students, right? Like it's really apparent, like that you're supposed to put everyone's kind of happiness, harmony above yours, kind of.
What's like an example of something
Um,
that you experienced?
an
It's really
example.
shocking.
So I can start with some of the stories I heard pretty frequently, which is, and probably most people know this, it's like the working culture in like traditional Japanese company is can be very frustrating and tiring because some of this, like the long working hours kind of thing, I think that kind of stems from that kind of social expectation too, where a lot like I heard from a lot of friends like you're probably familiar with the overtime, um, the extreme overtime when it comes to working in Japan. Like a lot of
Yeah,
these,
I heard.
yeah,
Is it true?
they say, from what I heard, yeah, and but the thing is like they do it not because there's like oftentimes at least it's not because there's actually a lot of work, but like one good example is if your boss hasn't left, you're not supposed to leave, right?
Mm.
That kind of thing. And but where actually they're not really doing any work, which is just crazy, right? Like they're just hanging out around there, just sitting and
It's more of an
wait.
image thing.
Yep, yep. And so that's a more kind of general example. A more direct personal example would probably be uh, like my experience when I attended this school. So I think most students are sort of adults, most of them at least. So my expectation was they were sort of they're going to treat us sort of like adults, or even just like college students here in the US, where like whether you want to learn or if you want to study or not, that's your problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you want to do your homework or not, that's your problem. But here they're really kind of they they're treating you more like a kid in middle school, I would say. So one example is that like my attendance rate, to be honest, hasn't been the greatest. But they have a clear line on like you're not supposed to be lower than a certain percentage. And I always kept mine above it. But because mine are lower than most kids and it's like closer to the line, they would
Oh.
like sometimes call me, "Hey, Lucien."
Oh.
Yeah.
Like
Uh,
call you on the phone, talk, remind you
or just in person, like, oh, like
person.
this teacher wants to talk to you after
Oh,
class. Oh, okay.
wow. Okay.
Oh, you want to talk to me? That's fun. Okay. But yeah, turns out it's usually about that thing where, yeah, oh, so I noticed your attendance has been pretty low.
Oh, okay.
And if it comes like from a place of just caring about me, that's I can totally understand that. Oh yeah, they care about me. They want me to learn and stuff.
Yeah.
But then there's always this part where, oh, it kind of interferes with the harmony of the class
Oh,
if you do this or that. Yeah. And I'm like, what does it have to do with me, right? Like I don't think they're bothered because I kind of know them, and it's like I'm following the rules, and like sometimes I want to do other things or have other priorities,
mm.
right? But yeah, they'll really ask you, oh yeah, what are you doing outside, like when you're not attending class, or when you're late to
Okay.
class, what do you do? That kind of thing.
So
It's
they
really
want
like,
to.
yeah, you're
Oh.
treating it does feel like they're treating you as a kid, sort of.
Mm.
It's like, oh
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, I thought it was more like a, I don't know, maybe a reporting requirement where they had to report, I don't know,
right,
to immigration or so, making
yeah,
sure that people are attending. But
like
as long as
if
it's still within
someone,
the
yeah,
threshold,
right,
should, yeah.
it's like I don't like there are these rules for a reason, right? Because you get in trouble and I get in trouble if I drop below a certain point. But yeah, um,
Okay. Yeah.
um, yeah, those kinds of things. And I see it just here and there, just living there. There's always these kind of things, um, which personally I'm not a big fan of. Right?
So these are all things that before you went to Japan, you didn't really realize. I mean, not during your time vacationing, traveling over there.
Right. And like I do know about it, but I just don't know like the details or how much or how it feels really.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, like actually living there, it's because you experience it, you feel it, and you can like feel the pressure when it makes you hesitant to do something because there's some kind of social norm that's going on that people expect you to do something a certain way, even though it doesn't make too much sense to you, right?
Wow, that's really interesting. So it's really not just about learning the language, but you find out so much more, right? About how the culture is and how things work in a different country.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, um, yeah.
But overall, did you, in the end, did you find that this experience was worth it? Like worth the money and the time that you spent?
Oh, totally.
Did you
Yeah,
get
yeah.
what you were hoping to get from this experience?
I think so. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think in the end, it's still worth it. Like regardless whether I ended up living there or not, which I didn't ended up living there, but I think the experience, learning the language, of course, exploring Japan, getting chance to travel around even outside Japan,
Mm.
um, just meeting new people, um, and it's just a refresher sort of in life, right? It's that point where it it doesn't just feels, maybe it is sort of like just a new segment of your life where you can just start fresh, try different things, right? Like you're in a new place even, which makes it easier, and it's a place you like, or um
Mm.
so I think that's all really valuable in the end.
So
And it
it's
does give me time to think about, like, okay, I quit my job, what do I want now, right?
oh, okay.
And I think I gave myself enough time where I don't feel like it's a hurry. Like I had a lot of time to take it easy and think about it.
How many years did you work again before you went to Japan, before you quit your job?
Almost 8 years.
Almost 8 years, and that's
Hmm.
like a full stretch with no major breaks in between, besides
Correct.
your vacation.
Hmm.
Okay, so after 8 years, you quit, and then spent 2 years in Japan. Okay, wow, that's oh, that's really a yeah, once in a lifetime. No, not once in a lifetime, I guess, but
I
like
hope
a
not.
really good, a really good experience. Yeah. So if other people, our listeners, are perhaps considering to learn a language, um some people would maybe consider just to stay in their country and do a language course there, right? You can do
Hmm.
that too, and there are native speakers as well, certainly. Would you recommend them to do that, versus, or would you recommend them to do like what you did, going to the country and learning there? What do you think are kind of the differences or the benefits of doing that?
I mean, if you can afford it, absolutely go to the country. I think, yeah, that's definitely the way to learn the language. And um, I don't think it's impossible to learn it in just where in your current location and taking courses. Um, One thing though, it's definitely a lot harder doing it that way. Being in the country itself, where everyone speaks the language, where every single sign out there is written in a language that you want to learn in, it just makes it a lot easier because everything just pushes you towards understanding the language,
Mhm.
right? It's like, oh, I want to go here, so I have to read the sign on the subway, blah blah blah. If you want to get there, you either have to try read it or try asking someone about it. And I guess a good, maybe you can see it as a good point, is that in Japan, like a lot of them are in that provision in English, so you
Uh-huh.
cannot. It's harder to cheat and get around by just like asking everyone like in English. So you're forced to try speak your way with the local language, which sometimes leads to misunderstanding, but that's all part of the journey, right?
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah. If anyone is currently considering this and feels a bit hesitant about whether to do it or not, what would you advise them or say to them?
um, I guess first, why would they be hesitant, right? um, I guess if it's financial, then yeah, I can totally see it. It does, like, it is an expense, but I always think, like, to me it's definitely worth it. It's totally worth it. It's a unique experience. It's a fresh experience. Um yeah, it's definitely eye opening, right? Um it's a new place, new people, new language. So I guess depends how new you want things to be. You can choose your target language or country, right? I imagine if I go to somewhere in Europe, that would be less different, but I mean, it would still be a great experience. But to me, at least, Japan was very different from um, the life I have in Seattle. Yeah.
Would you consider doing this again? But going to another
Absolutely.
country, I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I would definitely do something like this again. Maybe different in in the structure of it or the actual purpose of it, but I would definitely want to try live in another country. I think, yeah, it's a definitely an eye-opening experience and just fun, right?
Mhm.
Just fun.
Yeah. When do you think is the best time to do this? Like a kind of a mini retirement or an extended break from work to learn something new? Like at what point in your career would you recommend people to do this?
Um, I would think that you will sort of at first you'll probably kind of feel it when it comes that time.
Like,
and,
oh, I
and
had enough now.
and since we call it mini retirement, like yeah, probably if you're feeling like okay, um, um this is whatever I'm doing is getting repetitive, or I want a break. I think it could be various reasons, really. Yeah, for me, probably it's just I would say just do it as soon as you can, because why not, right? And if there are hurdles or obstacles, then of course solve those first, and then when you're ready, I would say just do it. Because why the delay, right? I don't think there's any reason to
Yeah.
delay it.
And it turns out that while it costs a lot, is actually not as much as I thought. And in many cases it can even cost less than your current living expenses in your country, right? So as long as you
Absolutely, yeah.
plan like far in advance and you plan your finances and you save up for it,
Yeah.
and yeah, actually it's pretty doable. It's not that
And like if you do uh do the part-time get a part-time job, or you do other work that gets you extra money, I think that'll be even more affordable. Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. So once you finished that almost 2 year stay over there, and then you went back to Seattle, right?
Hmm.
And I think you didn't go back to your job, but instead you started
Right.
working on developing your own indie game.
Hmm.
And by the way, for those listening right now, in case you don't know yet, this is actually the second time I'm doing a podcast with Lu Sien. The first time we actually talked specifically about his experience leaving his 9 to 5 job as a software engineer, a high paying and stable job, to pursue his own thing, developing his indie game. So, in case you haven't listened to that one yet, you can watch it on YouTube. I will put the link down in the descriptions below and you can check that out. So after you spent those almost 2 years in Japan and then you went back to Seattle,
Hmm.
yeah, it must have been a bit weird, right? Like getting back to normal life. How did you kind of like restart your life again in Seattle and then start working on your game?
um yeah, yes, it was a bit weird, but at the same time it feels refreshing. Like, yeah, I'm ready to get back to working, right? To do something. um I think the change itself wasn't hard or anything going back here, but um so I started working on my own game, right? My game project, and I was mostly setting up sort of a mini workstation at my home to like my mini home office, so to say.
Mm.
And so I would spend most of the time just working from home. And then not long after that, surprise, surprise, COVID arrives, right?
Right.
Which is perfect,
Yeah.
perfect timing for just getting back here. Um, which actually, at least for me, might be a good thing that it didn't happen earlier. What while I was in Japan, right? Because it would like definitely ruin my experience there. to some degree.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, so yeah, but right after I got back here, COVID happens. But since I was already kind of working from home, it didn't affect me too much. So I
Mm.
think I was doing
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the path you took. It's really, I would say, an alternative path because I can imagine that many people want to do that. They really, really want to go somewhere, spend some time abroad, right? And get
Mm,
refreshed and try to do something different, but they either don't have the courage or they're not prepared financially, or they have some people, they do have the money, but they
mhm.
feel like, oh, I'd rather keep on working and making more money and then I'll save this for maybe later on when I'm in my 50s or 60s, and then I'll take all the time I need, right? Like many people in the financial independence movement, like
Yeah,
accumulate all the money first and then save all the fun for later. And then you kind of did it in this like mini retirement way where you insert this little break in between and got refreshed after it.
yeah.
Um,
I could definitely relate with that bit where there's the temptation of just keep working. Like I was in a good spot in my career. It's like, yeah, just why not make more money, right? That's very, very tempting.
mhm,
uh, Made it really hard for me to leave the job. But I would say in the end, yeah, it's totally worth it. Especially if you're in a situation where where it's relatively safe to say that you can go back to get a job again. So um, yeah,
yeah,
totally worth it.
great.
uh,
Yeah. So if you would summarize your whole experience, what do you think was your not takeaway, but like how did it maybe like how did it change you or your life, if in
how did
any
it
way?
change me or my life? Um,
Or what did this experience mean to you in terms of your yeah, your life and your career? Like what did it do for you? Maybe that's a better question.
right, right. Um, I mean, first, definitely, it's a big refresher. Um, it it gives, I think, giving me just the time and energy to think about what I want to do next with life. I think to me that was really precious because like when you're working on your regular job and so it's really hard to kind of separate yourself from that kind of routine and having a more big picture. Whereas when you're in a new environment with new people and everything, it's much easier to kind of consider various different perspective.
Mm,
And yeah, just it was also a sort of, I don't know, lesson, I guess, or experience in the sense that you you can live in a new place, because there's always that hesitancy, right? Like, oh, I'm comfortable now, but will I still be comfortable over there? Like, will I be able to do anything, make friends, talk to people, like live life? And I think we often underestimate how like adaptable we can be. And and I think the last bit is just, again, that another part of this refreshing aspect is like when you're at a new place, it it makes it way easier to try new things, just in general, from the smallest thing to like the big things in life. Like I remember, like even like when you just go traveling, for example. I remember like sometime I was like in Sweden at like some music festival I decided to go to, and before that, like I never thought of myself like to like be into dancing or liking dancing at all. But when you're out there like in a new place, no one knows you, you're just exploring, um no one's judging you, no one's talking about you, you will, it's just so much more easy to like explore yourself, try new things. Yeah, it's way easier that way, I think.
Wow. I haven't really thought of it that way, but yeah, that's really, really insightful. I think I should do that too. Like sometime soon, hopefully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I think we're 1.5 hours in now. That was so great. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on the Multiple Careers podcast again and talking about your whole experience.
No, I'm really
Yeah.
happy to be here. It's just
Yeah.
very
So
delightful.
very important thing now, where can our listeners find out more about you and also especially about your game project? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so these days I have a Instagram and Twitter account where I post updates about my game, and my handle is itslusien, so itslusien. So you can check out screenshots of my work there, and you can even contact me there. And I started a blog recently that
Mm,
hopefully kind of journals the development and the process of making a game by myself.
mm.
Um, it's the link for that is super organic. So SUPER and then ORGANYICK.substack.com.
Great. Yeah, I'll make sure to put that in the description
Yeah,
as
that was a bit
well for
tricky.
those watching this on YouTube. Yeah, so everyone make sure that you check out Lu Sien's Instagram and his Substack also, and get in touch with him and ask him any questions you might have about doing a mini retirement in Japan and also developing his own indie game, starting his own thing. Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah, so thank you so much again, Lu Sien. I hope we'll have you on again some other time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
until then,
Looking
take care
forward to be
and
back. Yeah, you
take
too.
care and all the best with your game and everything.
You too.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye.
Bye.